Standing alone at my college graduation, I clutched my real estate degree while scanning the empty seats reserved for my family. Not one showed up. 4 years of working night shifts, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, all while building my first business. 7 years later, my $2.9 million penthouse renovation project made headlines in the Wall Street Journal. That same night, my phone lit up with a text from my dad. Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion. I arrived with property contracts and something they never expected. A lawyer. Growing up in Cleveland, I always felt like an afterthought in my own family. My parents, Frank and Linda Walker, made no secret of their preference for my younger brother Jackson. He was the golden child, the star athlete with the charismatic personality. I was just Derek, the quiet kid who preferred blueprints to baseballs. Our modest 2-story home in the suburbs became a shrine to Jackson. Trophies lined the mantel. Newspaper clippings about his baseball achievements covered the refrigerator, and dinner conversations revolved around his latest game. Meanwhile, my academic achievements collected dust in a drawer. Jackson needs these new cleats for his future, my father would say, handing over $200 without hesitation. But when I needed $40 for a science competition entry fee, the response was always, "Money is tight right now, Derek. Maybe save up your allowance." By 16, I started working at a local hardware store after school. The owner, Mr. Calloway, noticed my knack for spatial thinking and took me under his wing. "You got a good head for design, son," he told me one day as I rearranged the store layout, increasing the front display sales by 30%. That summer, I helped him renovate rental properties, learning the basics of construction and property valuation. When college application time came around, my parents sat Jackson down with college brochures spread across the dining table. "We want you to focus on baseball, not worry about tuition," my mother said, rubbing his shoulder. Later that night, she handed me a community college pamphlet. "This is more in our budget for you," she explained, before quickly changing the subject to Jackson's upcoming tournament. I applied to Ohio State University anyway, earning a partial academic scholarship. The remaining tuition I covered myself by working night shifts at a 24-hour diner and weekends at construction sites. For 4 years, I operated on 5 hours of sleep, maintained perfect grades, and even started a small campus business connecting students with affordable housing. My graduation day should have been triumphant. After confirming 3 times that my family would attend, I reserved 5 front-row seats. I sent detailed directions to the business school auditorium, reminding them parking would be difficult. The ceremony was at 2 in the afternoon, and at 1:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Jackson has regional game today. Can't make it. Take pictures." I sat alone before the ceremony, watching other graduates surrounded by proud parents and siblings carrying flower bouquets and balloons. A hollowness expanded in my chest as I pinned on my Honor Society cord with no one to celebrate the achievement. Professor Adams, my real estate finance mentor, noticed me sitting alone and came over. "Your family running late?" "Not coming," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. His face softened with understanding. "Well then I'm claiming your extra seats. I've got someone you should meet." After the ceremony, Professor Adams introduced me to Alan Mercer, a commercial real estate developer whose projects were transforming downtown Columbus. "This kid has the most innovative property valuation approach I've seen in 30 years of teaching," Professor Adams told him, gripping my shoulder. We exchanged business cards, and Mercer promised to call about an entry-level position. As they walked away, I checked my phone, hoping for at least a congratulatory text. Nothing from my parents or brother. That night, exhausted but unable to sleep, I scrolled through social media to distract myself. A post from my cousin Tara stopped me cold. It showed my parents, brother, and several extended family members at my uncle's lake house. "Perfect day for a family barbecue," read the caption. The timestamp was yesterday. I zoomed in on the image, noticing Jackson wearing his team jersey. The regional game my parents had chosen over my graduation wasn't even happening today. They had lied about the reason they couldn't attend. They simply chose not to come. I closed my laptop, a cold clarity washing over me. The family that was supposed to support me unconditionally had made their priorities crystal clear. From that moment, I decided to focus my energy on the people who actually showed up for me. Starting tomorrow, I would build a life where my value wasn't determined by someone else's assessment. Alan Mercer called 3 days after graduation, offering me a position as his assistant. The salary was modest, but the opportunity was exactly what I needed. I found a tiny studio apartment in Columbus, barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls by extending my arms. The rent consumed nearly half my monthly income, but it was walking distance to Mercer Commercial Development. My first day, Alan handed me a stack of property reports. "Tell me which ones are worth our time," he said before walking away. No instructions, no criteria, just a test of instinct. I stayed until midnight, analyzing each property, not just for current value, but future potential. The next morning, I placed 3 reports on his desk. "These have hidden value the market hasn't recognized yet." He raised an eyebrow, leafing through my analysis. "Most beginners go for the obvious luxury properties. You pick the challenges. The biggest returns come from seeing what others miss," I replied. For 2 years, I absorbed everything about commercial real estate development. While my colleagues went for happy hours, I visited construction sites, befriended contractors, and studied zoning laws. My apartment walls became covered with maps of Columbus development zones and property value trends. On weekends, I explored neglected neighborhoods, photographing abandoned buildings, and researching their histories. One Saturday, I discovered an old manufacturing facility in a declining industrial district. The brick structure with arched windows had been empty for decades, but the bones were solid and the architecture distinctive. I prepared a detailed proposal for Alan, suggesting we convert the space into mixed-use development: ground floor retail, middle floors for offices, top floor loft apartments. He listened to my pitch with growing interest. The acquisition cost would be minimal, I explained, but the renovation would be substantial. The return, though, could exceed 20% annually once fully leased. "Impressive analysis," he said, "but we don't have the bandwidth for another project right now." Disappointed but undeterred, I approached several banks with my proposal. All rejected me due to my age and limited assets. After the 6th rejection, I sat on a park bench, feeling defeated when my phone rang. It was Sarah Thompson, an architect I'd met through a local business networking event. "I heard you've been shopping a project around," she said. "Let's get coffee and talk." Sarah became my first business partner. She brought technical expertise and connections to local contractors. Together, we secured a small business loan and purchased the factory building for a fraction of what comparable properties would cost in developing areas. The renovation process was grueling. We discovered asbestos, structural issues, and outdated electrical systems that drained our budget. For 6 months, I worked days at Mercer and nights at our project site. I learned to install drywall, refinish hardwood floors, and negotiate with city inspectors. When we ran out of money with the project 70% complete, I met James Wilson, an attorney specializing in real estate investment. He connected us with Beth Harper, a financial advisor who helped us structure a second-phase investment opportunity that brought in the capital we needed without surrendering control. The Walker Thompson building opened 18 months after purchase. Every unit was leased before completion, and the property value tripled. My first million came from that project, allowing me to leave Mercer Development and establish Walker Restoration Group. During those years of intense work and growth, my connection with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday cards and occasional birthday gifts that went unacknowledged. Each December, I sent a carefully selected present to my parents' house. Each year, silence followed. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was building something more important than family approval. But every time I achieved a new milestone, a small part of me still wished they could see what I'd accomplished. My 4th major project came to me unexpectedly. The city announced a redevelopment initiative for historic buildings in the downtown core. The centerpiece was the Caldwell building, a 1920s architectural gem that had fallen into disrepair. The top floor featured a penthouse that had once been the private residence of the original owner. When I saw the listing, something clicked in my memory. Years ago, at one of the rare family dinners, where my father had actually engaged with me, he'd mentioned working on the renovation of the Caldwell building as a young contractor. He described hidden details in the penthouse that only the construction crew knew about, including hand-carved moldings and a secret passage between rooms. I gave the foreman ideas about how to preserve those features while updating the space, he'd said with unusual animation. Never got credit for it, but some of my suggestions made it into the final design. It was the only time I'd heard genuine passion in my father's voice about his work. Now, decades later, the building was available again, and I felt an unexpected connection to it. This wasn't just another project. It was a chance to engage with a piece of my father's past, perhaps even honor the creativity he'd never been recognized for. I submitted an aggressive bid, leveraging the reputation I'd built for historically sensitive restorations. 2 tense weeks later, the city awarded us the contract. The Caldwell would become my most ambitious project yet, and the penthouse would become my home and company headquarters. The day we received the keys, I walked through the dusty penthouse alone, running my hands along the wood panels my father might have touched. I wondered if he would care that his son now owned the building where his ideas had been overlooked. Would this, finally, be enough to make him proud? As I studied the architectural plans that evening, my phone chimed with a news alert. My younger brother Jackson's sporting goods store had filed for bankruptcy. The business my parents had emptied their retirement fund to help him start had lasted barely 2 years. I felt no satisfaction at his failure, only a hollow recognition that even in this, our paths had diverged completely. Renovating the Caldwell building became an all-consuming passion. The 6-story structure required complete electrical and plumbing overhauls, structural reinforcement, and painstaking restoration of original features. I assembled an elite team of historical preservation specialists, modern designers, and craftspeople. The goal is to honor the past while creating spaces that work for the future, I told them during our first project meeting. This isn't just another development. This is preserving a piece of our city's soul. The lower floors we developed as premium office space, maintaining the grand marble staircase, and restoring the brass elevator doors to their original luster. The middle floors became luxury apartments with views of the downtown skyline. But the penthouse, the jewel of the building, I reserved for myself. As renovation began on the top floor, we uncovered exactly what my father had described years before. Intricate hand-carved moldings hidden behind later renovations, and a concealed passageway between the master bedroom and study. I spent hours examining these features, wondering if my father's hands had helped create or restore them. 4 months into the project, we made an unexpected discovery behind a false wall in the penthouse library. A small room contained original architectural drawings of the building, signed by the architect, along with personal journals from the Caldwell family. These documents significantly increased the historical value of the property. I hired archivists to properly preserve these materials, donating copies to the City Historical Society. Their proper handling and public accessibility generated positive press for the project, attracting attention from preservation societies and architectural publications. The most challenging aspect of the penthouse renovation was balancing historical accuracy with modern comfort. I wanted to honor the 1920s craftsmanship while creating a livable, functional space. We restored the herringbone hardwood floors, rebuilt the limestone fireplace, and recreated period-appropriate lighting fixtures. For modern elements, we designed custom cabinetry that concealed state-of-the-art technology, climate control systems that didn't interfere with original ductwork, and a kitchen that looked period-appropriate but contained commercial-grade appliances. One particular feature became the centerpiece of the design: a curved glass solarium extending from the main living area, offering 270-degree views of the city. This hadn't existed in the original design, but utilized a terrace space that had been unused. The steel and glass structure, though modern, was crafted to echo the Art Deco motifs found throughout the building. This is where past meets future, I explained to a visiting city council member touring the construction. Respecting history doesn't mean being trapped by it. As the completion date approached, production costs soared beyond initial estimates. Historical materials became increasingly difficult to source, and specialized labor rates climbed. Sarah recommended scaling back some of the penthouse features to control costs. "The penthouse is the heart of this project," I insisted. "We'll find the money elsewhere." I took out a personal loan against my other properties to cover the additional $200,000 needed to complete the penthouse to my specifications. Some called it foolish, but I knew the finished product would justify the investment. After 14 months of intensive work, The Caldwell building renovation was complete. The 5,000-square-foot penthouse became both my personal residence and the headquarters for Walker Restoration Group. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed panoramic city views, while restored original details provided a sense of timeless elegance. I hosted an exclusive open house for industry professionals, city officials, and media representatives. The event generated substantial buzz in real estate circles, but I hadn't anticipated what happened next. A week after the open house, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The caller identified herself as Amy Parker, from the Wall Street Journal, requesting an interview about the Caldwell restoration. The name stopped me cold. Amy Parker had been my girlfriend senior year of high school, before she left for journalism school on the East Coast. We had lost touch after I skipped prom to work an extra shift at the hardware store. "Amy," I said, surprised. "You're with the Journal now?" "Derek Walker," she replied, a smile in her voice. "I've been following your career from afar. When this assignment came up, I specifically requested it." We arranged to meet at the penthouse the following day. When Amy arrived, 12 years had passed since high school, but her curious eyes and thoughtful expression remained unchanged. Now she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the world. "This is extraordinary," she said, turning slowly in the solarium, notepad forgotten in her hand. "You've created something special here." The interview lasted 3 hours, as we walked through each space. Amy asked insightful questions about the preservation process, the building's history, and my vision for urban renewal. As we talked, I found myself sharing details I typically kept private. How I'd worked night shifts through college, how I'd started with nothing but determination, how this particular building connected to a rare positive memory of my father. "You never mention your family in any of your previous press," she noted, pausing her recording device. "Are they proud of what you've built?" I looked out at the city skyline before answering. "We don't really stay in touch. They haven't seen any of this." She studied me for a moment. "That's their loss, Derek. Truly." Amy's article, titled "The Preservationist: How One Developer is Reimagining History," was featured in the real estate section of the Wall Street Journal the following Sunday. The piece detailed the $2.9 million penthouse renovation, highlighting innovative preservation techniques and the discovery of the historical documents. The online version included a video tour that went viral in design circles. The exposure catapulted the Caldwell building into national prominence. Leasing inquiries doubled, and my company began receiving calls about similar projects in other cities. Local television stations requested interviews, and a regional business magazine named me Developer of the Year. 2 days after the article published, Amy called again. "Your story has generated the most engagement of anything I've written this year," she said. "The editor wants a follow-up piece about your other projects. I'd be happy to show you around," I replied, surprised at how much I looked forward to seeing her again. "Before we schedule that," she hesitated, "there's something you should know." After the article went live, I received a message from someone claiming to be your cousin Taylor. She said your family has been following your career more closely than you realize. My stomach tightened. "What did she want?" She seemed concerned. "Said your father has been telling people he gave you your start in real estate, that your uncle is considering approaching you about a family business opportunity." I thanked Amy for the warning, unsure what to make of it. My family had shown no interest in my life for years. Why would they suddenly take notice now? The question was answered that evening, when my phone displayed a text from a number I hadn't seen in years. "Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion. Dad." After all this time, after years of silence, my family wanted to talk. Not when I graduated with honors. Not when I opened my first successful development. Not when I needed support or encouragement. Only now, after my name and $2.9 million penthouse appeared in the Wall Street Journal. I called James Wilson, my attorney, immediately. "I need your advice," I said, explaining the situation, "and possibly your presence at a family dinner." In the week following my father's unexpected text, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who had never bothered to call before. My Aunt Diane wanted to catch up over coffee. Uncle Steve suggested talking business opportunities. Even my brother Jackson sent an awkwardly casual text as if we'd spoken last week instead of 3 years ago. I responded noncommittally to each, buying time while I prepared for whatever my family was planning. Amy agreed to discreetly look into my family's current situation, leveraging her journalistic research skills without raising suspicions. We met for coffee 2 days before the scheduled family dinner. Amy slid a folder across the table. "Your father lost his construction supervisor position 8 months ago," she explained. "Age discrimination lawsuit pending, but unlikely to succeed given the company's documentation of performance issues." I flipped through the papers she'd compiled. And my mother? Medical bills. Significant ones from what I could gather. Some kind of surgery 4 months ago, followed by complications. Jackson? His sporting goods store failed spectacularly. He's living with your parents again. The bankruptcy filing shows he personally guaranteed several business loans. The picture became clearer. My newly successful family member was now a potential financial resource. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Sympathy for their troubles, anger at their transparent motives, and beneath it all, a small, stubborn flicker of hope that perhaps this could lead to genuine reconnection. "There's more," Amy said, hesitating. "Your cousin Taylor reached out to me again. She says your family has been monitoring your career for years. Your mother keeps a scrapbook of news mentions about your projects. Your father has been telling his friends that he taught you everything you know about construction." This revelation hit harder than expected. They had been watching from afar, taking pride in my achievements without ever expressing it to me, without offering a single word of congratulation. Taylor also mentioned that after the Wall Street Journal article, your father contacted several of his construction industry connections, claiming he had insider knowledge about your development strategy. I sat back, stunned. He's using my name to what? Network? Get contracts? Apparently, Taylor overheard him telling someone he was consulting on your projects. I thanked Amy for her research and spent the rest of the day in my penthouse office, staring at the skyline while processing this information. Part of me wanted to cancel the dinner, to continue my life without reopening old wounds. But another part needed closure, needed to understand why my family had withheld their support when I needed it most. James Wilson, my attorney, agreed to join me for the dinner. "Just as a precaution," he said when I called. Family and business can be a volatile mix. The evening before the dinner, I reviewed old family photos I'd kept in a box untouched for years. My high school graduation, where my parents had at least shown up, though they left early for Jackson's baseball practice. A family vacation to Lake Erie where I spent most of the trip reading in the hotel while everyone attended Jackson's tournament. Christmas mornings where Jackson's pile of gifts towered over my modest view. Had I misremembered? Had there been love I'd failed to recognize? The evidence in these frozen moments suggested otherwise. In nearly every photo, I stood slightly apart, already an outsider in my own family. I was gathering the documents James suggested I bring when my phone rang. It was Professor Adams, my college mentor, checking in as he did every few months. "I saw the journal piece," he said proudly. "Exactly what I predicted. When I introduced you to Mercer, you've outpaced even my highest expectations." His genuine pride filled a space inside me that my family's absence had left empty. "I appreciate that more than you know," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Everything okay, Derek? You sound off." I found myself explaining the upcoming family dinner and the circumstances surrounding it. Professor Adams listened, without interrupting. "Family is complicated," he said finally. "Just remember, your worth isn't determined by their recognition of it. You've built something remarkable through your own efforts." His words steadied me. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' suburban home exactly on time, James following in his own car as agreed. The modest house looked smaller than I remembered, the lawn more neglected. A new SUV sat in the driveway, surprisingly luxurious given their supposed financial troubles. Before I could ring the doorbell, my mother opened the door, her face arranged in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Derek, we've missed you so much." Her hug felt rehearsed, her perfume unfamiliar and expensive. The living room was crowded with family members I rarely saw. Uncle Steve and Aunt Diane, cousins Taylor and Mark, my father's brother, Uncle Paul, with his wife Susan, and my brother Jackson slouched in the corner, examining his phone. "The prodigal son returns," my father announced too loudly, clapping me on the back. He looked older, gray, now dominating his once dark hair, But his confident posture remained unchanged. "Everyone's excited to hear about your fancy penthouse." I introduced James simply as my colleague, noting the flash of uncertainty in my father's eyes at the unexpected addition. Aunt Diane immediately engaged James in conversation, asking pointed questions about his role in my company. During dinner, the conversation remained superficial. How was I enjoying the penthouse? Had I considered vacation property investments? Was I dating anyone serious? Each question probed for information without expressing genuine interest in my life. My mother served an elaborate meal that must have cost several $100s, including expensive wines and seafood that had never appeared on our family table during my childhood. The disconnect between their financial concerns and this lavish spread was striking. As dessert was served, my father cleared his throat. "So, Derek, we have some exciting news to share." "Here it comes," I thought. "I've started a family business," he announced proudly. "Walker & Sons Real Estate Development." He slid a business card across the table. Sure enough, it featured my father's name prominently, with and Sons beneath it in elegant script. The logo resembled my own company's branding. "We've been inspired by your success," my mother added, placing her hand over mine. "Your father has such experience in construction, and Jackson has amazing people skills for sales." We thought, why not keep it all in the family? "I wasn't aware of these plans," I said carefully. "Well, you've been busy with your own projects," my father replied, his tone suggesting this was my fault. "But now that you're established, we thought it was time to bring the family together professionally." Uncle Steve leaned forward. "Frank tells me you've developed a unique approach to historical restoration. Very profitable niche." "The result of years of specialized work and relationship building," I replied. "But think how much faster you could expand with family support," Aunt Diane interjected. "We've already talked to some interested investors." My cousin Taylor caught my eye from across the table, her expression apologetic. She alone seemed uncomfortable with this transparent attempt to capitalize on my success. "What investors?" I asked. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. My mother hurried to answer it, returning with two middle-aged men in business casual attire. "Perfect timing! Derek, these are our friends Tom Bradshaw and Richard Kent. They're very interested in our family venture." The men shook my hand enthusiastically, both mentioning they were fans of my work and excited about the Walker family partnership. It became clear they believed I was already part of this family business. "I'd like to clarify something," I said, looking directly at my father. "I'm not involved with Walker & Sons. This is the first I'm hearing of it." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father laughed dismissively. "Don't be so formal, son. Of course you're involved. It's your family." James, who had been quietly observing, now shifted in his seat. I gave him a slight nod. "Mr. Walker," James began, addressing my father, "I should introduce myself properly. I'm James Wilson, Derek's attorney. Before this conversation continues, I'd like to understand exactly what representations have been made about Derek's involvement in this enterprise." My father's confident smile faltered. "Attorney? This is a family dinner, not a deposition." "Unfortunately," James replied, removing a folder from his briefcase, "I have reason to believe this dinner has business implications that my client should be aware of." He turned to me. "Derek, while conducting standard brand protection monitoring for your company, we discovered something concerning." He placed a loan application document on the table. There, unmistakably, was my signature, or rather, a poor imitation of it, authorizing the use of my name and professional reputation as collateral for a $75,000 small business loan for Walker & Sons. The room erupted in confused voices. The investors looked alarmed. Jackson suddenly found intense interest in his dessert plate. My mother's hand flew to her throat in a gesture of shock that seemed rehearsed. "That's just a formality," my father blustered. "Family businesses operate on trust, not paperwork." "Forgery operates on criminal statutes, Mr. Walker," James replied evenly. In that moment, looking at my family's faces shifting between entitlement and fear, I realized this dinner had never been about reconnection. It had been about exploitation all along. The recognition brought both pain and clarity. These people weren't family in any meaningful sense of the word. They were opportunists who who shared my DNA. The dining room fell into uncomfortable silence after James revealed the forged loan document. My father's face flushed red, while my mother dabbed at non-existent tears with her napkin. The investors, Tom and Richard, exchanged concerned glances. "I think we're getting ahead of ourselves," my father finally said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss family matters in private." "I agree," I said, standing up. "Mr. Bradshaw, Mr. Kent, I apologize for the confusion, but I have no affiliation with Walker and Sons. Any representations made to you about my involvement were made without my knowledge or consent." The investors awkwardly excused themselves, promising to touch base later with my father. As the front door closed behind them, the pretense of a happy family reunion evaporated. "How dare you embarrass us like that?" my mother hissed, her earlier warmth completely gone. "After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. "We raised you," my father shouted, pounding his fist on the table. "We put a roof over your head, food in your mouth, and this is how you repay us? By sending your attack dog lawyer to intimidate us?" I remained calm. "I worked my way through college without your help. I built my business without your help. I haven't heard from any of you in years. Now suddenly, after my penthouse makes headlines, you create a business using my name without permission? It's a family business," my father insisted. "The Walker name belongs to all of us. My reputation doesn't." My brother Jackson finally looked up from his phone. Classic Derek, always thinking he's better than everyone. "You got lucky with a few buildings, and now you're too good for your own family." "Lucky?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I worked night shifts serving coffee to pay tuition while you got new baseball equipment every season. I lived on ramen in a studio apartment, smaller than this dining room, while building my first project. That's not luck. That's work you've never been willing to do." My Uncle Steve tried to play mediator. "Now, boys, let's not get heated. We're just trying to create an opportunity here. Derek, your expertise combined with your father's construction knowledge could be very profitable for everyone." "My father hasn't shown interest in my career until it became profitable," I replied. "None of you have. I sent Christmas cards for years that went unacknowledged. I invited you all to my company's 5th anniversary celebration. No one came. We've been busy with our own lives," Aunt Diane said defensively. "Too busy to respond to a text? Too busy to attend my college graduation?" My mother's expression hardened. "We had priorities, Derek. Jackson had an important game." "He didn't," I said flatly. "I saw the social media posts. You were all at Uncle Paul's lake house." Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. My cousin Taylor spoke up for the first time. "He's right. I posted those pictures. We were all there, even Jackson." My father waved his hand dismissively. "Ancient history. We're talking about the future now. A partnership that could benefit everyone." James cleared his throat. "Mr. Walker, I should inform you that using Derek's signature without authorization constitutes forgery. Additionally, representing him as part of your business to potential investors could be considered fraud." "We don't need legal threats," my father snapped. "This is between family." "That's exactly why I brought legal counsel," I replied. "Because I knew this wasn't really about family." My mother suddenly shifted tactics, her voice becoming tremulous. "You don't understand our situation, Derek. Your father lost his job. My medical bills have been overwhelming. Jackson's business difficulties have strained us financially. We're just trying to create a new start. With my name and reputation, without asking me first." "We've made sacrifices for you your entire life," she exclaimed, the victim act fully engaged. "I gave up my career when you were born. We drove you to all those academic competitions." "I took the bus to science competitions," I corrected. "You drove Jackson to baseball games." The conversation was going in circles. I stood up again. "I think we're done here." "Wait," my father said, his tone suddenly conciliatory. "At least come see what we've put together. We've converted your old bedroom into a home office for the business." Curiosity got the better of me. I followed him down the hallway to my childhood bedroom, James trailing behind. What I saw inside stopped me cold. The small room had been transformed into what could only be described as a shrine to Walker and Sons, featuring materials stolen from my actual career. Framed newspaper articles about my projects hung on the walls, but with my father inexplicably appearing in the photos, clearly photoshopped in. A display case contained architectural models of buildings I had developed, labeled as Frank Walker Concepts. Brochures featuring my properties had been altered to include Walker and Sons branding. "What is this?" I asked, genuinely shocked. My father beamed with pride. "Our portfolio. We've been collecting your press coverage for years. Did you know you've been mentioned in over 30 articles? Your mother has kept every one." The realization was dizzying. While ignoring me personally, they had been curating a collection of my achievements, now repurposed to create the illusion that my father had been the real force behind my success. "You've been following my career all this time, collecting articles about me, but you couldn't send a single congratulatory text?" My father looked genuinely confused. "We knew you were doing well. What was there to say?" In that moment, I understood the true depth of the disconnect. In my family's mind, my achievements weren't something to celebrate with me. They were resources to be harvested. My success wasn't a source of pride in their son, but an opportunity they felt entitled to claim. "You can't use any of this," I said, gesturing to the room. "The altered photos, the misrepresented projects, this goes beyond family misunderstanding. This is calculated misrepresentation." My father's face darkened. "We're your family. We have rights. Not to this. You don't." We returned to the dining room, where the rest of the family waited expectantly. My mother looked up with forced optimism. "Did you see our little home office? We've been so proud, collecting all your press. Proud enough to doctor photos and create false business materials. But not proud enough to actually call your son," I replied. Jackson stood up, his patience apparently exhausted. "Just cut the sanctimonious act, Derek. You've always thought you were too good for this family. Now you've got your fancy penthouse, and you don't want to share the wealth. That's what this is really about." "I earned everything I have," I replied. "Just like you could have. Not all of us had professors playing favorites and handing out opportunities," he shot back. "Professor Adams became my mentor because I worked harder than anyone else in his classes," I said. "Alan Mercer hired me because I proved my value. Sarah Thompson partnered with me because of my ideas and work ethic. Not once did anyone hand me anything I hadn't earned." "And now you won't even help your own family," my mother said accusingly. James interrupted what was becoming an unproductive argument. "I believe we've established that Walker and Sons has misrepresented Derek's involvement and potentially committed fraud. We should discuss next steps." My father's composure finally broke. "Next steps? You come into my house with a lawyer and threaten me? After everything I've taught you about business? Who do you think gave you your first taste of construction, taking you to job sites when you were a kid? Your fancy penthouse in the Caldwell building, who do you think told you all about its hidden features? That was my building, before it was yours." Something clicked into place. "Is that what this is really about? The Caldwell building? I spent years working on that building," my father continued, his voice rising. "Gave the foreman ideas he took credit for. Now you own the place, making millions, and won't even acknowledge where you got the inside information." "I bought that building because you once mentioned working on it," I admitted. "It was the only time you ever shared anything about your work with me. I thought restoring it might finally make you proud." The admission hung in the air between us. For a brief moment, something like understanding passed across my father's face. Then it hardened again. "Well, now you can make us all proud by bringing your expertise to the family business," he said, as if the conversation had simply been a negotiation tactic. I looked around the room at my assembled family. My mother's calculated tears, Jackson's resentful glare, my aunt and uncle's transparent greed. And in that moment, I realized I had been seeking approval from people incapable of giving it genuinely. "There is no family business," I said finally. "There's just an attempt to capitalize on my work without doing any of your own, and I won't be part of it." The silence following my declaration lasted only seconds before the room erupted. My father leapt to his feet, face contorted with rage I'd never seen directed at anyone but me. "After everything this family has done for you," he shouted, repeating the familiar refrain that had never matched my actual experience. "You, Ungrateful, selfish. Frank? My mother interrupted, placing a restraining hand on his arm. Her tactical shift was immediate, tears replaced by a cold calculation. Derek clearly needs time to consider what's best for everyone. Let's not say things we'll regret. My brother Jackson wasn't as restrained. This is exactly why nobody wanted to go to your stupid graduation. You've always thought you're better than us with your fancy degree and your real estate deals. Guess what? You're still the same boring, uptight kid nobody wanted to hang out with. Each word was designed to wound, to reopen childhood insecurities. In the past, such comments would have cut deep. Now, they simply confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a family in any meaningful sense of the word. I think we're done here, I said, turning to leave. You walk out that door. Don't bother coming back, my father threatened. I looked at him steadily. I've been gone for years. You just never noticed. As James and I headed for the door, my cousin Taylor suddenly spoke up. Wait, Derek. I need to tell you something. My aunt tried to silence her with a sharp Taylor. Not now, but she persisted. They've been using your name for more than just the business, she blurted out. Uncle Frank has been telling people around town that he financed your education, that he's a silent investor in your company. My father's face paled slightly. Taylor, that's family business. It's lies, she replied, showing unexpected backbone. And Derek deserves to know. My mother attempted damage control. We may have emphasized our support of your career when speaking with friends. That's what families do, support each other. Support? I echoed in disbelief. You've been actively taking credit for my work while having no actual involvement in my life. That's not support. That's exploitation. Uncle Steve tried another angle. Look, Derek, everyone's getting emotional here. Why don't we table this discussion and meet again next week? Your father and I have appointments with 2 more potential investors, who are very interested in what Walker & Sons can offer with your expertise behind it. There will be no more investor meetings using my name, I stated firmly. James, what are our options here? My attorney addressed the room with professional detachment. The unauthorized use of Derek's signature constitutes forgery, a criminal offense. The misrepresentation of his involvement to secure investments could be prosecuted as fraud. The altered photographs and promotional materials infringe on intellectual property rights. He paused, letting the legal implications sink in. However, Derek has indicated he'd prefer to resolve this as a family matter if possible. To that end, I've prepared a cease and desist document requiring immediate discontinuation of Walker & Sons and any business activities claiming Derek's involvement or using his professional reputation. My father's face flushed with anger again. You'd sue your own family? I'd protect what I've built, I replied, just as you would in my position. This is ridiculous, Jackson interjected. You show up after years of no contact, with a lawyer in tow, making accusations and threats. Who does that to family? Someone who knew exactly what to expect, I answered. Someone who received a text from his father only after his success made headlines. So, you're too important for us now? My mother asked, her voice dripping with practiced hurt. Too successful to remember where you came from? I remember exactly where I came from, I replied. I remember working 3 jobs to pay tuition while you paid for Jackson's equipment. I remember sending invitations to every major milestone in my life that went unanswered. I remember standing alone at my college graduation. We had our reasons, my father began. Yes, you did. Jackson's baseball game that never happened. The lake house party you all attended instead. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. No one could deny the truth of what I'd said. James placed the cease and desist documents on the dining table. I suggest you review these with your own attorney. They're quite straightforward. All business activities using Derek's name or implying his involvement must stop immediately. All altered materials must be destroyed. No further representations about Derek's relationship to Walker & Sons may be made to potential investors or anyone else. My father made no move to touch the papers. And if we refuse, then we'll proceed with legal remedies, James replied simply. Given the evidence we've already gathered, including the forged loan document, I don't advise that course of action. You'd really do this to your own parents? My mother asked, incredulous that her manipulation wasn't working. After everything we sacrificed for you? The question hung in the air, a final test of my resolve. For a moment, old guilt, and the desperate desire for family approval tugged at me. Then I remembered standing alone at graduation, scanning empty seats, the hollow feeling that had never fully left me. "What exactly did you sacrifice for me?" I asked quietly. "When did my accomplishments ever matter to this family except when they benefited someone else?" No one answered. Taylor looked down at her hands. Uncle Steve and Aunt Diane suddenly became very interested in their dessert plates. Even Jackson seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "I'll tell you what I'm willing to do," I said, breaking the silence. "I won't pursue legal action if you comply fully with the cease and desist. I'll even offer financial counseling resources to help you address your current situation, but not by using my name or reputation." My father's face hardened into a mask of contempt. "We don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's the kind of actual support families should provide, helping without taking, giving without expecting control in return." As we turned to leave again, Taylor stood up. "I'm sorry, Derek. I should have told you sooner what was happening." "It's not your responsibility," I assured her. "Still," she said, walking us to the door, "it wasn't right. None of this has been right." In the quiet of the front porch, away from the others, she spoke in a hushed tone. "There's something else you should know. After your Wall Street Journal feature, your parents threw a barbecue, inviting everyone they know. They had poster-sized printouts of the article, telling everyone how they'd guided your career from the beginning. The absurdity of it struck me then, my parents celebrating my success with others while never once congratulating me directly. Living off the reflected glory while contributing nothing to the achievement itself. "Thank you for being honest," I told Taylor. "At least someone in this family understands what that means." As James and I walked to our cars, the weight of what had just happened settled on me. The family reunion I'd secretly hoped might lead to reconciliation had instead confirmed that some relationships can't be salvaged. The gap between us wasn't just about past hurts or misunderstandings. It was about fundamentally different values and a willingness to exploit rather than support. "Are you all right?" James asked as we reached the curb. I looked back at the house where I'd grown up, now filled with strangers who shared my name but not my principles. The pain was there, but alongside it was something unexpected. Relief. The burden of seeking approval from people incapable of giving it was lifting. "I will be," I answered, and for the first time in years, I believed it. The legal proceedings against my family weren't what I had wanted, but they became necessary when my father refused to comply with the cease and desist order. James handled everything with professional discretion, keeping the matter out of public records whenever possible. What could have been a scandalous headline became instead a private reckoning, concluded with a binding settlement agreement 3 months after that disastrous family dinner. Under the terms, my parents and brother acknowledged their misrepresentations and agreed to never again use my name, image, or professional accomplishments for their benefit. In return, I created a family trust with very specific conditions. Family members could receive financial support for legitimate education, healthcare, or housing needs, but only after completing a financial responsibility course and submitting a formal application to the independent trustee. "This isn't about punishment," I explained to James as we finalized the documents. "It's about breaking a cycle. My family sees money as an entitlement rather than a responsibility. This structure gives them access to help, but requires them to participate in their own solution. It's more generous than many would be in your position," James observed. "Maybe, but I needed to close this chapter in a way that reflects who I want to be, not just responding to who they are." The day the settlement was signed, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The fantasy of family reconciliation had died, but with it went the burden of seeking approval from people determined to take rather than give. In the months that followed, I channeled my energy into creating something meaningful from the experience. The Walker Foundation Scholarship was established for students without family financial support, providing not just tuition, but mentorship from successful professionals who had overcome similar circumstances. Professor Adams, my college mentor, joined the selection committee. "This transforms your personal pain into opportunity for others," he told me. "That's the mark of real success." The foundation's first fundraising event was held in the Caldwell building's restored grand ballroom. As I prepared my speech for the evening, Amy Parker arrived early to cover the event for her newspaper's philanthropy section. "Nervous?" she asked. finding me adjusting my tie in a quiet corner. A little, I admitted. This feels more personal than any business presentation I've ever given. She straightened my tie with the easy familiarity that had developed between us over the past several months. What had begun as professional contact had evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared values. Your story will resonate with people, she assured me. Not just the success part, but the honesty about the struggle. The ballroom filled with colleagues, business partners, city officials, and potential donors. I spotted Sarah Thompson, my first business partner, chatting with Alan Mercer, who had given me my start. Beth Harper, my financial advisor, was deep in conversation with James. These people, who had seen my potential and treated me with respect, had become more family to me than those who shared my blood. To my surprise, my cousin Taylor arrived just before the program began. We hadn't spoken since the family dinner. I hope it's okay that I came, she said hesitantly. I saw the event announcement in the paper. Of course, I replied, genuinely pleased to see her. How are things? She shrugged, tense. Your parents don't know I'm here. They don't talk about you anymore, but your name hangs in the air whenever family gathers. She paused. Jackson moved to Cincinnati. He's working construction, actually. Seems to be straightening out a bit without your father's influence. I nodded. Glad to hear it, but not particularly moved. And you? What brings you here tonight? I wanted to see what real integrity looks like, she said simply. The way you handled everything. It made me think about my own choices. I've applied to business school for the fall. That's wonderful. If you need any recommendations. Actually, she interrupted with a small smile. I was hoping to apply for one of your foundation scholarships. Not because we're related, but because I meet the criteria. My parents won't support my education since they think girls just get married anyway. I promised to connect her with the application process, making it clear I wouldn't influence the selection committee's decision. She wouldn't get special treatment because of our relationship, but she also wouldn't be penalized for the actions of other family members. The event was a success, raising enough to fund 10 full scholarships for the coming academic year. My speech about the importance of supporting talented individuals who lack family resources resonated deeply with the audience, though I kept the specific details of my own family situation private. Afterward, as the crowd mingled over dessert and coffee, Professor Adams approached with a young man in tow. Derek, I'd like you to meet Lucas Reeves, he said. Lucas reminds me a lot of you at that age, brilliant mind for development, incredible work ethic, and unfortunately, very little family support. Lucas shook my hand with the nervous energy of someone meeting a personal hero. Your restoration of the Caldwell building inspired my senior thesis, he said. The way you balanced historical preservation with modern functionality, it's exactly the approach I want to take in my career. As we talked, I recognized in him the same determined spark I'd had at his age. Before the evening ended, I offered him an internship at Walker Restoration Group, with the potential for a permanent position after graduation. Pay it forward, Professor Adams murmured approvingly, as Lucas walked away, beaming. The best revenge against those who couldn't see your worth. It's not about revenge anymore, I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. It's about building something better than what I came from. 6 months later, I stood in the solarium of my penthouse, hosting a different kind of gathering. The first recipients of the Walker Foundation scholarships had completed their first semester, and I'd invited them for a celebration of their achievements. Among them was my cousin Taylor, who had been selected on her own merits by the independent committee. As I watched these bright young people networking with established professionals I'd invited as mentors, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The pain of family rejection hadn't disappeared entirely. Some wounds never fully heal, but it had transformed into something constructive. Amy joined me by the windows, slipping her hand into mine as we looked out at the city lights. Our relationship had deepened into something neither of us had expected, but both treasured. Penny, for your thoughts? She said. I was just thinking about how we define family, I replied. For years, I measured my worth by the approval of people who couldn't see it. I kept trying to earn love that should have been freely given. She nodded, understanding without needing elaboration. And now? Now I know that true family consists of the people who celebrate your successes without trying to claim them, who support you without expecting control in return. Sometimes that includes blood relatives, but often it doesn't. Across the room, I saw Professor Adams deep in conversation with Lucas and Taylor, while Sarah Thompson was showing another scholarship recipient her architectural portfolio. James and Beth were answering questions from two students interested in finance and law. These connections, based on mutual respect and genuine care, had formed a network stronger than the family ties that had failed me. "You've created something remarkable here," Amy observed, "and not just the building." She was right. The true achievement wasn't the penthouse that had made headlines, or even the successful business I'd built. It was the understanding that our value isn't determined by those who withhold their approval, but by what we choose to create despite their absence. Later that evening, after the guests had departed, I stood alone in the penthouse living room. On the mantel sat a framed photograph from that day's event. All the scholarship recipients gathered around me, their faces bright with possibility. Next to it was a simple wooden frame holding my college diploma, finally displayed proudly after years in storage. I touched the diploma gently, remembering the empty seats at graduation and the long journey since. The pain of that day had led me here, to a life filled with purpose and authentic connections. Sometimes the family we're born into fails us, but that doesn't determine our capacity to create something meaningful from that pain. The most valuable lesson wasn't that success is the best revenge, though there was some truth in that. The real insight was learning that we don't need to keep seeking approval from those who are incapable of giving it. We can instead channel that energy into building something that reflects our own values, creating spaces where others feel the validation and support we ourselves were denied. In the end, my family's rejection had been painful but clarifying. It forced me to define success on my own terms and to recognize genuine support when it appeared. The $2.9 million penthouse that had drawn my family back into my life was just a symbol. The real wealth was in discovering who truly belonged in my inner circle and what legacy I wanted to create. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Sometimes the people who are supposed to support us unconditionally are the ones who let us down the most, while meaningful connections form with those who have no obligation to care. If this story resonated with you, share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more authentic stories, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by family approval. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the family that matters is the one that celebrates your success without trying to claim it as their own.